Every few years, some movie studio releases these run-of-the-mill CGI movies based on successful video games like Resident Evil's Vendetta and Final Fantasy's Kingsglaive. And I'm not gonna lie, I like watching those, but I can't help but question why do they keep getting made? Especially with the ones connected to the Resident Evil IP, since after the release of the notoriously bad live-action movie Resident Evil Apocalypse, the subsequent live-action sequels and prequels struggled to make a profit, with each one of them making less than the one before it. So while the interest for the games kept on increasing, the interest for the movies attached to them evidently kept on dwindling down. And in 2022, Netflix released a TV series adaptation of Resident Evil that I'd argue did just as much damage to the RE movie franchise's reputation as the second live-action movie did, if not more. Also because the TV series writers strayed too far from the source material, it wasn't even worth checking out for any fans of the games. The situation is different for the animated movies. Out of all the TV shows and films released for the game, they are the most faithful to the game's IP, so much so that some of the characters' models look like they were straight up lifted off from the game. And their plots typically told stories that filled in the gaps for the in-between side stories, so the game's lore was kept intact, or so I assume. I've been following the game since its infancy, casually, so I don't claim to be an RE aficionado. Nevertheless, despite all of this, the outcome for these movies were not any better than the other Resident Evil movies. And judging by how people reacted/didn't react to them, I'm inclined to think my assumption about the lore being accurate in the animated movies is correct. They must not have revealed anything that made them a must-watch for the hardcore fans, nor did they butcher the game's lore and got people talking about them like with the Netflix series. They were just supplementary movies. Yeah, I think I got my answer. Well, at least as to why people don't watch them. But I don't think these movies are bad. In fact, the newly released movie, Resident Evil Death Island, exceeded my expectation. Granted, I went into it with a low expectations. But I think the movie is solid, so I want to share some of my thoughts on it. I guess now is an appropriate time to say hi, right? So hi, welcome to my channel. Let's talk about this movie. I gotta start off with the negative points because it's present throughout the movie. It's the CGI. The CGI's quality is good enough to me, like the environment, the zombies, and other models are fine, even great. So I suppose rather than the CGI itself, it's how it's animated that isn't all that great. It might not even be noticeable, but there are some subtle yet unnatural movements here and there. The best way to explain this is it's like the difference between motion captured animated movement and movement animated from scratch. Again, those off and unnatural movement occurred in very few scenes, unlike with the characters' facial expressions, where throughout the entirety of the movie, the characters' facial expressions ranged from decent to not good. I'm talking about stiff faces that don't match up with the emotion delivered by the voice actor. I don't know if I can show any clips of that, but if I can, I'll add them here.
Yeah? Who are you?
Claire Redfield from TerraSafe.
Luckily, the voice actors carried, so you won't have to guess what any of these characters are feeling. Now, about the story, There are four main characters. There are Jill, Chris, Claire, and Leon. Rebecca, who's in this movie relegated to being kind of a backup in-chair scientist character, she was the one who managed to find something connecting the peculiar findings that have been happening recently to some island. And so Chris, Claire, and Jill go to this island to investigate the situation. They blend in with a tour guide for the island to try to gather information. While on this tour, they get ambushed by zombies, and we briefly see all three of them work together to deal with them. Then they splinter off to try to save people and all that. Jill gets separated from the group, and later on she runs into Leon by chance in this underground tunnel sewer. So the zombies they face there are different, and yeah, great action scenes ensues. Eventually, all four characters' paths cross. It turns out that Leon was also there to look into the source of the curious things linked to this island. And the four of them decide to stick together because they figure that they're most likely investigating the same anomaly. However, they don't really do much investigating because they encounter the bad guy and he lays out the situation for them in his monologue. The bad guy this time was easy to hate. He had several scenes building up who he is nowadays, and others going into his background, i.e. flashbacks. But the one scene that did it for me is one where the writers gave you two reasons to dislike this bastardo. He's not the most complex character, and he kind of goes from an average Joe to an evil mastermind. I suppose some people are susceptible to that drastic of a personality shift, but logistically, this shift from a regular guy to an evil mastermind behind this whole island mess is less plausible. Like what? Did he win the lottery? One thing interesting to note here is that he has no staff in this place, no lackeys, aside from the zombies. I mean, do they count? The place is operated by no one. The only person who's working for him is, spoiler alert, Maria. I don't know who she is, I had to look her up. But because I knew about this version of Jill, which the character slightly mentioned, I wasn't confused about her behavior and her strength. But I wonder if others, even more casual of a fan than me, would be confused by this, because her situation and why she's capable of doing what she's capable of doing doesn't get explained. Maria has her own fight scenes. They were just as good as the rest of the action scenes in the movie. In her fights and in other characters' fights, these characters would be rolling on the ground, tossing each other, bashing each other's head against a brick wall, against a metal. But unlike the video games, this doesn't show on their clothes or their bodies. Their clothes don't get dirty, their teeth are intact, noses aren't broken, and not even a little cut is seen during or after the fights. There are hardly any blood unless someone gets shot at or gets severely injured. This doesn't apply to zombies, sort of. Like zombies and their victims get bloodied, but people who attack other people or zombies don't get blood splatter on them, nor does their own blood ever get spilled. This is an R-rated movie, by the way. Still, just like the games, these fights are over the top and the characters go for the flashy gymnastic move instead of the perhaps less impressive yet logical move. And because the four main characters weren't always together, they all got their moment to shine, even Rebecca. But I don't want to spill everything that happened in the movie, so I'll just leave it here. In conclusion, this is a fun popcorn movie. Expect explosion, slightly physics-defying action scenes, and if you've ever played any RE game, you'll know how this movie will end. So let me know what you think of the movie if you've seen it. That's it. Bye. What? What happened to Leon?